I think we're live. That is a huge
Maybe.
question mark coming from a professional streamer. Never really understands if he's live or not. I think you will test. Now you are a professional streamer. That is quite difficult
Yeah.
sometimes.
Let me tell you. I'll give you all the rundown of how it all works because I am a professional now. Apparently.
I saw you stream for about 6 minutes, and then I refreshed, and I was like, "Where's the stream?" And then you were back for about 1 minute, and I was like, "Where's the stream?"
Dude, last week was a nightmare for the start of that stream, but whatever fixed itself. So whatever we got there.
Uh oh.
The fun of being a professional.
Early signs. Let's go, boys. World class investigative journalist APGAINS is about to get the scoop of a lifetime. Well, that being said, let's hop in. I prepared a bunch of questions about you, yourself, and whatever I is, if it was you. And they are all community donated. I used 0 of my own brain cells because, let's be honest, for a man who streams a number 69 and whose average viewing age is 4.5 years old, I don't exactly have a lot of brain cells to spare. So,
Yeah, man, make everyone do the work for you. Trust me.
dude, delegation is one of the most important things about being a leadership. So I have been told from leaders who were delegating to me.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to start off with a question. Yes, there's a little bit of nepotism here. Coming in from 501st Trooper, my guild leader. I thought I'd give him an extra little bonus because he brought me in when I was down and out and wounded and has taken care of me. And this is one of the ones I think I'm actually most interested about. Can you describe your first ever experience with Star Wars? Like, how old were you? Did you see a movie in theater? Did your parents show you? Like, what was your first interaction with Star Wars as a brand, as a media?
Yeah, okay, let's think about that. I think my first experience was watching the movies. My parents were huge. My dad is a huge sci-fi fan in general and saw Star Wars in the theaters. I'm not quite old enough to have seen, or at that time to have seen, the original trilogy in the theaters.
I figured that.
But I did go see episodes 1, 2, and 3 in the theaters when they came out. I was able to, obviously old enough to see those then. But I think my first memory is just like sitting on the couch with my dad and watching the original trilogy more than anything else. Then got into toys and all that other stuff that was coming out in the 90s and things like that in the late 80s. But it was, sitting down watching those movies on probably terrible VHS quality back in 1985 or whatever.
That's how I got my start as well. Now, Star Wars is by far my biggest love in terms of media, video games, all that stuff. But you have a bunch of very diverse interests in not only shows but games as well, because you play a lot of stuff. Where would Star Wars rank in terms of like intellectual properties? Like, is it up there with Lord of the Rings? Is there like other big areas that are eclipsing it, or is it at the top just if it so happens?
I'd say Star Wars is at the top. I've always been a huge Star Wars fan. Long before this job, I was super into Star Wars. I had every Star Wars Lego I could get my hands on. I had the old like giant plastic Millennium Falcon.
Oh yeah.
That you pop the top off of and go inside it next to you, sit down at the holo table and whatever. So I can't think of a bigger like IP or world that I was more into. I mean, I've loved video games from when I was a kid as well. So like probably that also helped because there was a ton of great Star Wars video games like when I was growing up, like X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, all that kind of stuff. The ones for N64. There was like a lot of like, cross media stuff that I was like, oh cool, it's in the movies and it's also I get to play with it when I get home. So I would say, like, I don't think there's anything that's more important to me than Star Wars, other than my wife, of course. Caveat.
Of course. Yeah, she's not watching, but just in case she has
just in case.
recording devices in the area.
She's not here right now. Yeah. No. I mean, I do love Lord of the Rings. I do love a lot of other fancy stuff. I am a huge sci-fi guy like my dad. I also enjoy Star Trek. I know it's terrible, but it's sacrilege. But no, I mean, I like a lot of that stuff. I think it's all pretty interesting. I could sit down and watch a bad sci-fi movie almost any day and enjoy it, or a good one for that matter as well. But yeah, like like there's not much that's like that much bigger in my life that I could think of that other than Star Wars. So it's like kind of a dream come true to like work on Star Wars as well, because it's like if I could tell like 5 or 6 year old Crumb that like, hey, by the way, you're going to work on a Star Wars game when you're older, like I think my mind would have just exploded and I would have just died and would have created some sort of recursive time loop. But that would have been pretty exciting.
So there's Variant Crumb out there who's a big Marvel guy, and he's bringing down MSF because they're going
Yeah.
down hard. And maybe Variant Crumb's just not as good as his job as Real World Crumb. So that actually leads me into two questions. I'll let you decide which one you want to answer first. A question from Rage. He says favorite Star Wars game. You did talk about playing a lot of Star Wars games as a kid. And then another question from I actually didn't record who it was, but you worked with other companies. You know, Capital Games is not your first job. Is it more fun to do the game development process because it's Star Wars, or was there like a company that you used to work for where had some weird take where it was so much more enjoyable? Or how does it feel like actually working on Star Wars, being such a big Star Wars fan? Or you can answer the Star Wars game first. It doesn't really matter. I'm throwing two at you. See which one you swing at.
making me choose here. Well, I'll go backwards here. So yeah, I used to work on I've been very lucky, I should say. I mean, like, I'll talk about my time in the game industry. Prior to game industry, I was working in film and media and shooting video and stuff like that. And prior to that, I was doing computer sciences and things like that. And then prior to that, I was, you know, delivering ice cream or something, you know, working in a factory. But so I think I'll really more those jobs were jobs, and I did enjoy video stuff. But at some point, I realized that like that's probably not my passion, and I got a couple opportunities to go work in the game industry, and I've been super lucky. Every game I've worked on is a game that I've already been playing substantially. So it's not like I got to work on like Barbie Fun Time Adventure or anything like that and had to like sell that as an exciting thing for players. And one of my old producers used to tell me like, yeah, you guys are so effing lucky, because I worked on like Transformers mobile game was like his first game he was a producer on. He's like, try getting excited about that every day and going to work and saying, this is what I'm passionate about. So it's Star Wars is definitely makes it fun, and being a game that I enjoy, I think also makes it a lot of fun too. But there's something special about sitting in an office full of nerds and arguing about the most mundane Star Wars details that like you don't like the average person just doesn't get to do, right? Because I mean, especially like, you know, 10 15 years ago, or like when we were younger, like where it was just like not as popular to talk about this stuff in like a super nerdy way.
Yeah.
Like you just didn't have the people to like have these weird conversations with. Also kind of the fun of like when people get to go to like Star Wars Celebration, right? And they get to like finally kind of be a people of their own ilk, you know, and their own kind, and like have these like really great nerd out moments. Like you get that a lot. There's so many weird conversations you have like that are like entirely serious in the moment of like, well, no, it has to be like this because of these reasons, that this part of the story makes sense to make this thematically this way. And you're like, if you take what I just said out of context, it would sound like I'm a crazy person. It was like when we were playing like Baba Is You.
I was just gonna
right?
say, it's like if someone walks in and you're just like, no, wall is Baba, Baba is win, flag is move. Like,
yeah,
it makes
like,
no sense.
You're speaking your own language and that kind of stuff, and it's great to have someone who you talk to. When you talk to them, they like immediately get what you're thinking and they're on the same page as you, and that's like a pretty unique experience. And I think like, you know, I'm very lucky to have that, especially with Star Wars. It's something that's like so near and dear to my heart, to be able to like just nerd out on stuff. Or like when, you know, a new like when we were back in the office and there was like the Mandalorian stuff was happening, you know, the first season, we would like get up the first thing in the morning, go sit in a conference room and watch the latest episode, like with a bunch of people who are all like picking it apart and thinking about it in different ways, and also know the lore like crazy, so they can say, oh, that's a reference to that thing. Oh, that's part of this. This is why they, you know, Dave Filoni added that little piece to it, because that's an ice cream maker that was used in, you know, Empire Strikes Back. This guy was carrying when he was on Bespin, right? Like there's like so many weird details that like they've thrown into them, and being in a room with people who are all that passionate is like so energizing in a way that I'm sad that other Star Wars nerds don't often get to experience it. So long answer to your question, yes, it's awesome. To the first question around like my favorite Star Wars game, that's pretty hard actually. I did really enjoy the flight simulator games when I was younger. I think those were a big part of like just growing up and playing video games for me. But I will say the like Dark Forces era, you know, kind of Jedi Academy stuff where you were doing the kind of third person, like actual Jedi stuff was probably some of my favorites of all time. But I like played a lot of those probably bad Super Nintendo games if I go back to them now, of like, the Super Star Wars and whatnot. Like those, I played so much of that on Super Nintendo because I was so into Star Wars at the time. But probably not my favorite game of the Star Wars franchise, that's for sure.
So, are you excited then? Because apparently we're getting a lot of new Star Wars games in the future from different companies that kind of open that up. And I know you can't talk about personal relationships with Disney or whatever, but as a fan, are you excited at the potential of finally a lot of new quality Star Wars games hitting the market for you to enjoy, and maybe a third-person shooter if Hunters ever decides to get their stuff together, or adventure or story? Or are you excited about all of that stuff? Because I know I am.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll say, like, even as like, the game industry is a small industry. People talk a lot and people work together all the time. People switch companies, ideas get moved around constantly. So it's like, while it seems like, there may be a lot of competition between them, I think the people like on the design side and who are making the games themselves, there's a lot of camaraderie around that stuff. So it's very exciting. Like, I am stoked to see more games get out there. And I should have said my favorite Star Wars game. I don't know why I didn't think of this. KOTOR, of course, is my favorite Star Wars game. That's the game I played way more than all the rest of them, and I love RPGs. So KOTOR is the answer to that last question. Sorry, now I'm thinking about it. But I'm excited to see what else comes out of it. I think it's a cool, rich universe. There's so many different pockets we can explore, and games are just getting better and better. So I want to see what other crazy stuff people come up with, because every game is just like a series of choices that people make about where they want to spend their energy, how they want to actually like bring this part of it to life versus not this part, right? Like, they are making very clear choices, and you don't have time to make all of them. So it's awesome to see when someone else decides to make a totally different set of choices, and it doesn't make the game like worse or different or better. It's oftentimes just a different experience, and that's like just as exciting as anything else. So I'm all for seeing other products get out there, playing other games. I love to see different people get their hands on the franchise and see what else they can do with it. Like, just as Chris, not necessarily as Crumb, like working for the team here, but also I think the team is also pretty excited just to see what other ideas are out there. What maybe we get inspired by some stuff that they do, right? Like, from every aspect of the industry, there's always something you can take it, even if it's the genre is totally different, like Hunters, or something, like a third-person shooter or a first-person shooter like Republic Commando or something like that, right? Like, there's so much cool things that you can kind of pull from each of those that are like mechanically unique and kind of fun to figure out how do you translate to your own project that you're working on. So yeah, 100%. I mean, I love Star Wars. We're happy to see more of it.
So you're still a really young guy, so this is not entirely out of the question, but let's say one day you're the head of one of these companies, whether it be a company that exists now or a made-up one in the future. Yeah. What kind of angle of the Star Wars lore, if you could pick, would you focus in and make, maybe an action game or an RPG? Or what would you create if you had unlimited resources and the manpower to just do something that would be fun and amazing for Star Wars fans?
Oh man, if I had unlimited resources is the key there, I think, to figure out, because like I enjoy really well done open world games. I think they're like, something like Breath of the Wild, where like every inch of that world is something unique and interesting. That would be awesome to see, kind of like we had with Star Wars Galaxies, like, way long ago. We're like doing some kind of like updated open world MMO kind of style thing, but not necessarily massive multiplayer, even if it's just like single or co-op in some kind of way. I think that would be pretty awesome. But I'm also really into like roguelike progression in card games, so there could be I could see a pretty cool like short form, 3-hour kind of 2-hour kind of run thing that you build up over time and do, and have like a lot of different strategies around, depending on what kind of units you get or something like that. I also love like tabletop games, so like implementing some of like the Star Wars Legion kind of stuff into more of a game experience, like an actual PC gaming experience or something like that could be pretty cool. And some tying that into some sort of roguelike progression, I'd love to see. I mean, the possibilities are endless. I think you could put the Star Wars feel on top of a lot of different things and make it work in a lot of cool ways. Man, yeah. If I think again, I've like said like 5 different answers, but I think a big open world where you were exploring it and you're some kind of bounty hunter and you are like going around getting bounties in the universe, other stuff is happening around you, and it feels like you're immersed in a Star Wars moment, but you're not necessarily the lead of that. Like we've done a lot of the Jedi fantasies, or I'm the Sith fantasy, right?
Where I get Overlord and dominating everyone.
Yeah, like let's get more of the scum of the universe kind of perspective on this stuff. I mean, I think that would be a pretty cool world to live in.
See what Salacious B would be up to, our boy.
Yeah, exactly.
Before he
Where's
met Java,
Salacious? What is he doing on the streets?
his
Ripping out
origin story.
ripping out
As an
droid
RPG.
eyeballs and stuff. Yeah.
So there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do with video games, especially with Star Wars, especially with something that you love so much. Is there maybe something that CG at one point thought about doing that they threw out the window that you were a huge proponent of? I'm sure you can't talk about something if it's going to come later, but is there something that was so outrageous that we'll never see that you just really, really wanted as a Star Wars fan?
Yeah, it's hard because a lot of those ideas are ones we just have in our back pocket for later in the future. So I don't know what I could say around Galaxy Heroes specifically that I may not. I would get probably in trouble for going too deep on it. I'm trying to
Darth
think.
Jar Jar?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely some characters like Darth Jar Jar and things like that that would be funny to put into the universe. Though I think it would be difficult to work with our partners internally and externally to get some of those ones done. But
I'm
you know,
sure the
maybe,
Mickey Mouse would not be so so happy about that.
Yeah, we're all being
all
watched
just a
by the
family,
mouse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but you know, some of that Legends stuff would be cool to revisit at some point. Like I don't know. We'd have to see what's in the cards in the near future. But I probably can't say too much without losing my job.
Oh yeah, well, I'm unemployed, so these are things that I don't really take into consideration all too much as a person living in my mom's basement. But let's move on.
Yeah.
So we've talked all about Star Wars video games. What do you do when you're not playing video games? Because when I'm not playing video games or watching Star Wars, I kind of don't do anything. What do you get up to when you're out of the office, you're not doing these weird interviews with terrible characters impersonating the cup, saying 6969? What do you do when you just have free Crumb time?
Man, I play a lot of video games still, so it's like hard to say like what do I do? Like I sleep when I'm not playing video games or doing work. I mean, but other things I love to do, like I love painting. I do a lot of miniature work and stuff like that. You know, we play D&D campaigns oftentimes at the studio, especially when we were together. So like painting miniatures and stuff like that is a lot of fun. You know, I was big into sailing for a long time, so doing a lot of like lived on a boat for years.
Ocean?
Like you know, like a 35-foot sailboat is what I was living on for a while and things like that. So I like big boats, going out in the ocean if we can. Those are always fun.
That is not something I would have guessed. I'm gonna be honest. It's such a weird niche thing where like someone's like, "Oh, I'm into sailing." You're like, "Oh, really? That's so weird."
Sailing's a lot of fun. Like I love the water and I love swimming. Like it's a big part of it as well. So like I love the sea life. I love snorkeling. I love scuba diving, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of an extension of that, of like just being on the water, seeing cool sea life and things like that. Being able to just like go out in the middle of the ocean and just have the wind in the water just spray up against you as you're traveling along the coast. Had a really great trip when I first bought my boat. We started in San Pedro, down in Southern California by Long Beach.
Yeah.
Sailed it all the way up to Santa Cruz. Along the coast over the course of like 4 or 5 days, and that's like probably one of my favorite trips I've ever done in my life, of just seeing California from the water the whole way up. Well, not the whole way, obviously there's Northern California and other parts of it, but a good chunk of California. Yeah, so
anything above San Francisco I don't care about. Anything below anything below San Diego would be Mexico, so I get anything above San Francisco isn't really California. That's the Northwest.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I'm one of those guys who has like a lot of like passions that kind of switch up over time. Did like woodworking for a little while, was into that, I do painting quite frequently still, but then also, trying to do some like blacksmithing stuff as well. It's like something I've been trying to get into for the last couple of years. I'd love to like learn how to forge metal better and to like make tools and things like that. I feel like that's, doing something very physical with your hands is something I enjoy. Like we do a lot of digital stuff and we get to create things like this, but then having something that fills that other kind of need in you to like have something in your hand when you're done with it and go, yeah, I made this thing. Isn't this cool? So physical electronics and stuff. I was in a band for a long time and we were doing like a kind of stage show where
were you the singer? I know you were the singer.
No, I'm not a singer. This is my singing voice right here. You're hearing it.
Oh, yeah. Same here, man.
I did a lot of like special effects and stuff. It was kind of like a story kind of based band about a sci-fi kind of thing that we were doing, and we'd do a lot of special effects and stuff like that. So I would build
the synthesizer with the Mick Jagger fit on the glasses.
We got the theremin and stuff in the band. There was some wacky stuff we were doing, but we would have this whole like story and this whole experience that we would try and recreate. And so it was a lot of like electronics that I got to build, and that was a lot of fun of like working with like little microprocessors and like Arduinos and those little Raspberry Pis and stuff like that to build out like complex light shows and things like that. So I enjoy electronics as well and doing that kind of stuff. I also love cooking and barbecuing. Like that's probably like, you know, what I do more than anything else in my free time is like make food because food is delicious. And I love just sitting down on a barbecue and just cooking up some meat. So hard to beat that.
So you just listed a bunch of things that I all find interesting, but you know, the normie person might be like, oh, that's kind of niche, that's kind of out there. Speaking of things that are kind of niche, where did the shirts come from? Because you guys kind of were just online personalities and you came out with that video, and now the myth, the legend around you is he's always got the great shirts on. Where did that come from? Is that just like a spur of the moment thing? Is that something that someone showed you, or how did the shirts happen?
How did the shirts happen? That's a good question. I mean, like when I got into the gaming industry, you start realizing like, yeah, you can wear like a suit and tie every day, but even like the people at the top end, like, you know, you'll see CEOs like, I don't care that much. Yeah. They're oftentimes not dressed to the nines. Like it is about comfort and wearing whatever you want. And so like one things I love that are just like comfy is like nice, like silk Hawaiian shirts just happen to be something that I enjoy and feel comfortable in. And so my wife like started finding these at my when I was in the gaming industry, my previous job, being like, hey, here's some fun shirts that are Star Wars related, and you can wear these occasionally to the office and no one will bat an eye and whatnot. And so I kind of had this collection that I was starting to build, and then I got the job working at Capital Games, and it was like, oh, like now I can wear these and it's actually on brand now. Like now people actually encourage me to wear this. So for years, you know, before I was doing videos and stuff, like I was wearing these shirts around the office all the time. You guys just didn't see it. So like, this is not like a show that I've just like put on all of a sudden out of nowhere. Like, and credit to my wife on this one. She's the one who's purchased all of these for me and helps me have a good wardrobe, is to like constantly be finding like weird Star Wars shirts out there and letting me wear them. So I don't know where the legend started, other than I just started wearing Hawaiian shirts one day at the office and then never stopped.
Kind of just snowballed from there.
Yeah, kind of snowballed from there. Let's see what I got on today. I even forgot. I got the X-wing on today, the like flowery X-wing one with a little bit of, you got a little stormtrooper peeking out over the pocket there.
Guys, and for those of you in chat right now, there's obviously a leak that Luke's X-wing is coming. Don't read too much into it. He's telling us right now, guys. Another thing, we got a question from Declan Stratford, one of my friends. Where did the beard and hair routine come from? Because it is an iconic look now. You can't think Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. You can't think Cubs fan Han thumbnails without thinking of the fantastic hair-beard combo. And I know kind of where it came from, but for the people watching, where did that kind of originate?
Well, what do you mean you kind of know where it came from? I'm curious, what is your origin story of it?
Well, you said you kind of just did it because I think your wife said she liked it or for something, and then you found out that your dad had a similar style back in the day, and then it kind of just snowballed from there. I'm not a huge expert. I'm not a huge lore master on this subject.
not a Crumb lore expert.
A little toe dipped in there.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I always wanted to have this like mustache into the chops kind of thing since I was like a kid. Like I must have seen it in a movie somewhere. I was big into 70s culture, and like there's probably like some album cover that my dad had or something that I saw that, and I was like, yeah, that is the mustache. And so when I was like in college, I was like, oh, I wonder if I'm like old enough to finally grow a mustache now. And so I like grew it out, and I was like, hey, it works, whatever, I'm just gonna keep it like this. And I've kind of just like never looked back on it. I don't think about it very often, but like it is one of the weirder. It's not that weird. It's a more unique hairstyle, I guess, than probably a lot of people would have, but it's also just like, I don't know, it's easy to maintain. I like how it looks. And then, as you said, like sometime in college after I was wearing like this for a while, I like saw a picture of my dad on the like mantelpiece, and I was just like, he looked exactly like me with the same beard setup and everything, and I was like, did subconsciously I see this as a child, and like that's what made me think about this the whole time. But like, yeah, if you saw that picture, I think we were on Cub stream when we were showing it, there's like a picture of my dad I posted up there, and it just like looks like like an old fashioned, like I went to like a carnival and like they took like an old fashioned photo of me.
I thought that was at first before you explained it. I was like, oh,
you're like,
did you
oh,
get
it's
that
just
done at
picture of
like
Crumb.
Disneyland or something? Yeah.
Yeah, like exactly. It looks stunningly similar. So I mean, you know, I guess you become your parents, or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain eventually. I don't know, but yeah, I don't know. I've always liked it. Said my wife, as you said, like wants me to have facial hair. She prefers me with facial hair, and she prefers me to have long hair. So, you know, happy wife, happy life.
That's what they say. Over here in the 69th Precinct, we say happy Nikki Biggs, you continue to live. That doesn't rhyme, but that's just kind of the motto we live by. Nicole, if you're watching, I know you have class right now. I love you. Please don't take away my lunch money. All right. We're going to transition into a little bit of Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes stuff. We're going to bounce back because I still have some pretty spicy personal questions I want to ask you a little bit later.
Ooh, spicy.
Spicy. Chalky milk related questions. I see you sipping water and not chalky milk like everyone else should be. I need to get a chalky milk emote, but you know, those are expensive. And like I said, Nicole only pays for my food and not for my emote money. All right. So lots of stuff has happened, and you guys have admitted that sometimes accidents happen, like with the Conquest, it just didn't work. We don't want to get too hung up on that. Something went wrong. I'm sure you can't tell. Maybe you can tell us. Is there something that went wrong, or did it just not launch successfully and you had to pull it back and get it out?
I mean, it was a confluence of a bunch of different issues together that was like, you know, this is not the experience that we want to put out there. That we're not happy with this, and it became, you know, kind of snowballed to the point where like, okay, no, we've got to pull it down and try and, you know, reschedule this and rework it. And credit to the team for working super hard to get those bugs solved that they had problems with, knock them all out, and then get the Conquest back up to date. Like pretty fast turnaround for all of that, which I'm very, very happy about. So, but there's probably no one specific thing that was like, oh, well, that's the deal breaker. You know, it was a lot of straws that eventually broke the camel's back.
So just coding stuff that people who don't know how to code wouldn't understand, and we just got to kind of, you know, something went wrong.
I mean, you know, making games is hard, man. If everyone could do it, you know, we'd be in a different world.
Sometimes you move things and Baba is no longer you, and then it just doesn't work. I understand.
Yeah. I mean, like, this is not to said, like, make excuses here or for the team and for, you know, us putting out something that we weren't happy with. That's totally not okay. But, you know, like, making games is a very complicated thing, especially making a game that's been around for this long. There's a lot of levers and stuff tied together that makes it hard to sometimes make sure all of this works properly. And I know some people are like, oh, why didn't you QA this? Like, we extensively went through and tested this thing. I have a test group that I worked with that also like tested the bunch, and a bunch of this stuff like just didn't show up with that because it was a different environment for whatever reason. Or, you know, there's a lot of different factors that could happen about why it went out the way it did. But, you know, ultimately it sucks. It's like definitely not the kind of quality we want to put out. And so
you guys bounced back pretty quickly. I was actually pleasantly surprised.
Yeah. I said, I'm happy with how fast we pivoted and got back in the game here. Cause I think if we'd like, people have been wanting to get back into Conquest, there's been this delays to get this one launched in the first place. And then like to delay that like weeks and weeks further would have been like not great for us. So we hopped on that as fast as we could and got it back out there.
So I have another question from one of my guildmates, and hopefully this is something that you can answer because it's Mike David's question. He's a great guy. We're simming the Sith raid sometime in the future. You guys have said as much. How are the rewards going to look like? Is it, he specifically said top 3, top 10? What is the reward structure? Or do you guys even know at the current moment what the reward structure for simming the raid is? Because like for other raids, you don't get max rewards, but you get close enough, so it's more even. Do you guys have that ironed out?
I don't know personally what the answer to that question is. I will say that it's likely to be similar to what you see with the other simmed raids. But I don't know for sure about what the final plans are for that. I don't know if they're, I have not looked into it, so it could be that they're done and I just haven't seen it, or it could be still in progress right now. I honestly cannot speak to it in depth just because I'm ignorant of those things at the moment.
Fair enough. Question from L Skywalker 77, and you've actually talked on this, and this is one of the reasons where, you know, I used to be a big I'll admit a hater of CG. You guys in the last couple of years have been a lot more forward facing, and I appreciate that. And I think a lot of bad blood has kind of been resolved because you guys have communicated more. And we don't know, we're not privy to what's going on in the future. So just like when mods came out, when relics came out, like it makes sense and we're happy that they're there now, but in the moment we don't understand it. So L Skywalker 77 says, how does CG believe the overall player base will feel about the changes in, like, say, the next 6 months to the next year? Do you think in that time frame it's going to wrap together and we'll kind of see what you guys have been seeing for months?
Yeah, it's hard because it's so much of this is a long-term plan, and I think you hit it on the head earlier of like, when we were, prior to say Conquest and Galactic Challenges, we're kind of in a mode of like, cool, we got to get a lot of stuff done, and people kind of just have to trust us that we'll get to that point. And things like the relic system as well felt like initially like, oh, like why are they adding this layer of progression? But I think over time people said like, oh, this actually like democratizes power in this game, that like different characters, when you relic them up, can now compete in a way that they couldn't before. And so there's a long-term vision for a lot of this stuff, and I think like a lot of the changes we had recently definitely tie into what's going to be happening over the next 6 to 8 to 9 months. I wish we could talk more about it, honestly, because I think
Of
that
course,
would
yeah,
it
but
would
you
make
can't.
more
I get it.
sense to like to see the whole picture would be great, I think, like, but we are in a point where so much stuff is potentially changing, or things are locked in, but we just can't talk about them at this time. Like, that it would be great to communicate, but I think ultimately we can't right now. But I think honestly, in the next 6 months, I think there'll be some really cool, exciting wins for the players coming out, and there'll be some really cool stuff that people will get to like wrap their hands around and go like, wow, I never expected this to happen. So without like promising too much, because I know that sounds like way exciting, but I think there'll be some really cool stuff coming to Galaxy Heroes, and I think a lot of this stuff will make sense in like retrospect.
I'm sure it will. I mean, when like I stated, those previous changes, like there was a big outroar because we never really know exactly what's going on, and since so much can change, new shows can come out, new members can be added to the team, new ideas can surface. That's you don't want to get our hopes up, and I understand that. One of the best wins, I think anyone will agree, for the player base was the rework to Darth Vader back when he became from the worst character ever to like the best character ever. And I understand how he had some interactions that you guys didn't want to occur with certain characters, and then you kind of rolled that back a little bit. Are you guys happy with how his culling blade performs? Is that what was anticipated? Is it working? I mean, I'm not going to cast judgment. I mean, you guys gave me like the greatest moment of my life. Darth Vader is my favorite character, but is that an anticipated effect, that his culling blade would be this basically weaker than his basic, or is that just how it happens, or how
it's definitely something we're monitoring. I think it is, the balance is an ongoing process inside Galaxy Heroes, right? It is definitely never going to be the same and never going to be static. So there's definitely some like questions around, does Darth Vader still feel like Darth Vader? Does he capture like one of the most iconic characters in the entire Star Wars universe? You would argue that like most of the stories around the story of Darth Vader or Anakin, maybe prior to the recent trilogies, but like it is about, Darth Vader is just such a like iconic part of the Star Wars universe. Like when you think of Star Wars, you think of probably Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, that kind of like, he's at like that tier of like, just the most iconic stuff in the world. And so I think we want to make sure we maintain that. And, it's the long answer to your question is like, well, definitely something we want to look into. I'm not sure we're entirely happy with it. We'll have to see like how it all works out. I think we don't want to pull the trigger too fast on changes. I think it's easy to then like give people whiplash back and forth if we keep making changes too quickly, but also we want to be able to pivot when we feel like it's not going the direction we want to. So it's going to be something that we're going to look at. And, I'll say there are people inside the studio who are very much into like, how do these changes impact everyone's experience at a very like nitty gritty level. So, we'll definitely be taking a look at it, and maybe there's some changes in the future. I don't know at this time, but maybe it'll be something we announce at some point.
All right, so I'm going to slap you with the biggest haymaker of all time. I did not prepare you for this. You were absolutely going to be romple-stomped.
Oh, no.
Metas change. That's fine. And requirements change. When are you going to bump up Clone Wars Chewie shards from 3 to 4? It's a little ridiculous. This is not 2015.
Well, look, okay, first off, it should be 3 to 6, right? Because the shards got doubled. So 3 to 4 makes no sense. It should be 6.
Well, then inflation 7. Why not give us 7? Why is it 3?
No, because we doubled the shard rate for stuff. 6 is the right number here, and that is something that like I can't remember which. There was an issue we had, and I was organizing the compensation for it, and it had 3 Clone Wars Chewie shards, and someone on Reddit was like, "Why is it not 6?" And I was like, "That's a great question. Why is it not that?" And so I went to the team immediately. Was like, "I'm amending what I said earlier. We're doing 6 Chewie shards," and so I think that'll be the standard going forward. Is is 6 Chewy shards. I think that should be the standard, and I will fight for that until my dying breath. That should be the case.
That's good, because I know where you guys work, and I have access to a lot of 4.5-year-old children. So if I don't see 6 Chewy shards next time a holiday or something wraps around, you're
send
going
me a message
down.
on the forums, or come by the studio.
That better be in my inbox.
With a boom box over your head.
I'll wait for the first day it rains in Sacramento to go out there, which apparently might never happen because California hates rain. I haven't seen rain in forever.
It doesn't exist anymore.
All right, so I have a question from Natasha Winfield, one of my guildmates. She's in our guild. She's big on TWs and stuff. And I wouldn't say a problem, more of like a gamey min-max feature is how you could interact with territory wars by like reducing number of guildmates. Is that something that you guys are monitoring? Is that something that's just going to exist? Is there anything that you can say about, how you can cheese TW by like reducing players and kind of sandbagging in that way? Or is that just something that you can't talk about at the moment?
It's an interesting question. There are lots of discussions going on around territory wars and how we potentially address things like that with like sandbagging your guild and not bringing in the full squads and things like that. Yeah, I think that's probably the right thing to say, is that, it's definitely something we're looking at, and there's a lot of conversations happening about that actually right now inside the studio. So not to say there's going to be specific changes around that, but I would say that there's definitely some chances that might happen in the future where we address that in some way or figure out how to make some changes to territory wars at a larger scale.
That's good to hear. I don't particularly enjoy territory wars too much. I mean, I get carried by my guild, so I guess I'm not really in a position to complain one way or the other as the baby Yoda that's getting dragged around by my ankles. Speaking of, I just took a sip of chalky milk. Let's lighten the mood a little bit. What's your favorite flavor of chalky milk? Some people like white chocolate milk. Some people like chalky milk, strawberry chalky milk. What's your favorite chalky milk flavor?
Well, I mean, white chocolate is not chocolate, right? And is this an argument?
Sorry, I meant normal. I meant vanilla chalky milk, the stuff that comes straight out of the cow. Vanilla chalky milk.
Got it. Okay, that makes more sense. Yeah, no, just the straight chalky milk, man. That is the jam. Like, if I could eat and drink an infinite number of calories in the day, I would just drink chocolate milk all the time, pretty much. I'm drinking the essence of life. I'm drinking some water right now, but that is because I need to survive and to hydrate, which is always important. Definitely hydrate. Drink a glass of water right now. You probably haven't drank enough water today, so do that. It's important to stay hydrated. This is your Crumb health hour advice
PSA.
here.
Yeah, I think the next time you guys put out an ad on like Facebook or YouTube or wherever, it's not gonna have anything to do with the game. It's just gonna be your face, like, guys, you got to be drinking water. I get it, the holo tables are very vicious these days, but you got to be drinking water.
Drink your water. Yeah, in my bathroom, I have a big poster from the CDC from when they partnered with Star Wars to talk about vaccinations in like the 70s, and so it's C-3PO and R2 telling you to get vaccinated, which is, I think, hilarious. So not far off what Star Wars has done in the past of giving life-saving PSAs to people.
All right, I have a question from Ricardo. Gonna assume he's Spanish or Portuguese. I'm not gonna throw a guess at how to pronounce his last name because that's just gonna be a lawsuit right there. He says, and I don't know if this is a question that you can actually answer, but I thought I'd ask him just in case. You can always, if any of these questions you know you can't answer, I totally understand that. I've been in similar situations where just say
do
we
what
can't
I can.
comment. He says, what is the incentive for new players to farm old GLs if the new ones are just so much better? Is that something you guys are monitoring? Is it like phasing out old GLs and we should always just get the new ones if we're new to the game? Because a lot of my audience is newer players who haven't been around for super long. They don't have all the teams, and they got to quickly decide like what is the good stuff that's coming out that I should go for. Is that something you guys are thinking about?
Yeah, definitely, about like what does a world look like in Galaxy Heroes where there are six galactic legends, right? And I think they're all around the same kind of power level. There is some differences between them for sure. And the idea, I think, is also to just like, if you're getting in the door, you probably still want to go for like a Rey or actually probably Supreme Leader Kylo Ren is probably what you want to go for initially. The requirement's a little bit easier to get through. It sets you up for a bunch of other teams, or like C can also help you get a bunch of other good teams together as you get towards that as well. And then like as you progress further and your roster grows, it becomes easier to get some of the harder GLs and things like that. And so it is not to say that like, the the ones that have more that are more intensive to unlock are strictly going to always be better, but like there should be a progression to that so that you are getting through all the different GLs at different parts of your life cycle, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you guys just revamped, I would say, I don't know, re-illustrated the journey guide. I actually, like, at first I was like, why is the journey guide not here? I always go into that little thing on the right looking for the journey guide, and it's never there. I'll learn one day, but you guys are doing a really good job of, it seems like, giving new players who maybe don't watch YouTube videos or aren't invested in the forums or whatever, like a way to just tell if they're by themselves, like, this is the progression, this is what you should do. And I appreciate that. As someone who talks mostly to newer players, I think it's really important that they know, like, you get this character and then you get this character and then these characters are more powerful, so maybe you should wait off a little bit. So actually a big fan of the journey guide updates. Speaking of art related stuff, I don't know why this is always the biggest thing, but are we getting, you can't say who, but are we getting more art updates? Because they're amazing. I mean, Count Dooku is so beautiful. He's at gear 8 and I still use him in GAC because he's just so beautiful.
Yeah, that new model for Dooku is so good. It's like just like perfectly Christopher Lee. I love it. Yeah, I mean the art team is, like they are splitting their time with a lot of different projects at once, right? They're always having many different things in motion at any given moment. So, obviously we'd love to go back and like rework all the characters to bring them update, because as the game has grown, like our style has grown, our ability to make these characters with higher polygons has grown. We have better tools to do this kind of stuff, and you can see that with like some of these later characters, like Cara Dune looks like amazingly like the character as well, and like I said, Count Dooku with the update. There are some really cool ones. I think like we will always be splitting our energy there, and if we have spare cycles to do that, like we're not just going to sit around and do nothing. We're going to go, cool, we're in between projects, let's go and rework some of these characters to look more awesome. We'd love that to be part of a larger thing that's happening, or a reason to do that. So like the Dooku update, we knew we were going to do some kind of things around, maybe Lord Vader and maybe Dooku's in those events. So like, what if we make sure we update these as we're going through some of these other things, right? So there's a more of a logic to it than just we just like pick a character who we don't want to do and then we'll just update them. It is more around like what makes sense given what's coming up. How do we get more value out of like maybe an event or something like that if we add them in there or rework their character? We're already going to do maybe something around that, so what if we just did a little bit more with the free time we have to make that even better? So yeah, definitely there'll be more of those coming in the future. I can't say like when or where or who, but
of course
we're going to keep making those characters look awesome.
No, I hate to break it to you, and as a member of the community, I'm not sure if I like it. You just made CG sound competent. Are you saying that you guys know what you're doing? And you guys aren't just a bunch of...
Whoa! I wouldn't.
Are you saying that you don't hate us? You don't hate us?
Yeah, I mean, the folks inside the studio like love this game and they love Star Wars, right? Like I think it was funny, we were doing the Cubs interview with CG Miller, right? And everyone was like, "Oh, he knew the punishing one." Oh my God.
I was gonna say that earlier. I was like,
he knows it. It's like you just don't realize how big of a nerd he is, right? Like he just knows all this stuff at the top of his head. Like don't pretend that that's a hint about something that's coming. He's just a nerd. And you say the name of it. You say that, oh, it's so and so ship. He knows the name of the ship straight off the top of his head. He like said knows so many little details about stuff and then specifically how to spell them for me, which is helpful when I'm writing up posts about this. Being like, how does this actually spelled? What's the difference between Mandalore with the apostrophe versus Mandalore, the other one version of it, versus the planet versus the person versus the title versus the mantle that gets shifted around? What do all those mean again? So
Lore Master MVP Miller, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we don't have a specific lore master inside the studio, but I think he gets that title as just inadvertently for how much he knows about things. But yeah, I mean, I think like there is a plan. There are lots of people who are working on this project to try and figure out long term how this thing goes forward. And since you talked about like investing in the early game experience, making sure new players are coming into this game, that's the sign of a game that is wanting to go on for a lot longer. You don't start reworking the infrastructure because you feel like you're going out the door. You do that because you want this game to go on for as long as possible. So I think there's a good amount of foresight that the team has about like what is coming down the pipeline and what we want to do now to start supporting that. I think when I joined the studio, I came in and I was like, wait, why have we not done like regular Chewbacca or 3PO, right? It's like, well, because we know that those are iconic characters and we want to meter them out over the course of the lifespan of this game. Like if we went out day one with every iconic character, then like where do we go next, right? We start digging deeper and deeper into the whole of side characters and people who are maybe only mentioned in the credits in some degree, right? Like there's a foresight to this that this team has about looking at this thing holistically for years to come that I don't think becomes apparent until you've gotten there, right? Like you look back on it, it's like, oh, we've had great characters to unlock since the start of this game. That is not just an accident. That is because people have planned this very specifically about how this arc all goes. That's not to say we don't pivot around stuff and we don't like rethink what we're doing. It is that there is a core thing that we're working towards and that we're always trying to come up with the next set of plans and making sure we're working towards the next thing, next to the next thing, and down the road. You know, when we talked about having a 10, 20-year plan for this game, that's not a joke. That is something that the studio very much takes to heart around making sure that we are trying to do what's best for it. And some of these changes are like eating your vegetables a little bit, right? Where it's like, we got to do this for the long-term health of the game. We know that the game needs this, and so we're going to make those changes. And they may not be popular in the moment, but people will see this down the road when we do other stuff that this all makes sense together. So, yeah, I would go as far as to say I think, you know, we do a pretty good job of that. It may not come off like that sometimes, and I totally understand. But you know, we try really hard to make this thing awesome. So,
and I think one of the best things you guys have been doing is because you guys have always had a plan. There's always been progression. You guys have always had it mapped out. But sometimes for the player base, especially like before I made YouTube videos, I definitely fell into this. But now you and Doja especially are more forward-facing and saying like, "Hey guys, there is a plan," and I find that reassurance very, I don't want to say comforting, but like, you know, it gives me security in knowing that like, oh, they're not just, you know, everyone says, oh, the Capital Games is money hungry pig. Like there is progression in this game. This interacts with this, so this can't do this. I understand it now more because you guys are so forward facing with, hey guys, sometimes there are realities of game development that we can't just keep remaking kits around, you know, Thrawn's fracture if we don't want Thrawn to fracture. At some point we got to actually make changes. So I'm very appreciative of that. I think that's put it into a new frame for me. It kind of is more, I don't know what this, I'm just kind of like rambling at this point. It's comforting, so I appreciate that.
I hear what you're saying. And let's also be clear, like we're not perfect. We make mistakes. And we also said we try and learn from those mistakes and pivot off them when we can. So, you know, like when we see a problem, we're going to try and take our best shot at solving it. And you know, it's just an ongoing thing. This game is not solved tomorrow, right? It is something that we're going to constantly be working and struggling with and trying to make sure this game is great. And yeah, I think like having more faces out there really helps to just like add a human element to the whole thing. But like, we're not just a faceless group of people trying to make this game and take all your money. We are people who are passionate about this game and love this game, and we want to be here. You know, I think one of my best experiences is live events, right? And I'm sad we haven't been able to do those for quite a while. But like when we went to Star Wars Celebration, and you know, a lot of people got to meet myself, and I brought a bunch of designers with me to like just chat about what they were working on. And you know, I think you saw on Reddit over the like couple days we were there that like, wow, I just got to meet these guys, and they know what they're talking about. They're so excited. They love this thing. I can't believe I said something about them that I made in maybe in a moment of extreme passion that I didn't realize like how awesome these people are. And I think once you get to see and meet some people, like everyone in the studio I've talked to is awesome. Like I love everyone I get to work with. I think they all care about this game deeply. And I think that passion, like when it was quiet, it's hard for that passion to come across and to see the other side of the coin on that. But truly, I think the more we can get out there and the more we can like share what we're doing and communicate this stuff like as early as we can about it, and I'd love to get more of the team's face out there to describe what they're doing. And I think like people will see that there are very smart people. I think Cubs, you know, last time we're again on that stream was like talking about how when he got to come out to CG and he sat next to a guy and he was just like blown away with how like of a deep mechanical understanding he has of every piece of this game to a level that like no one else understands, right? And there are people of all types of that in this studio that care about different segments or big swaths of this game. And I just want to share that as much as I can with the people out there, because I think it is reassuring, and it does feel like, oh, okay, cool, they do know what they're talking about sometimes, and they're not all just idiots out there, you know. So hopefully we can do that more.
They were idiots, man.
sometimes I question myself. So maybe
It's
maybe
okay,
I'm just
man.
the idiot.
It's Star Wars. We're all going to be passionate. I mean, I'm here talking to you. I'm being a nice guy. I make videos when stuff that I don't understand or don't like happens, and I give my criticism, my feedback. I think that's totally fine. This is obviously something you can't say yes to, but maybe just kind of implant this in your mind. You talked about how we always benefit, like Cubs told you, when we get to meet other members of the team. Is there any way that in the next months or years that those members of the team who maybe don't do like the big massive stuff, but maybe they're in the art development team or they do the infrastructure, could like post videos or do interviews like we're doing right now, so we can kind of understand more members of the team, like what's going on behind the scenes from maybe a mechanical, technical standpoint, how art works, how we get new game modes built. Is that something? I know you can't say yes because you would be speaking for other people, but
No,
I just want to say that that's something
sorry.
that we would
Yes,
love.
I think we absolutely want to do that. I would love to get more people out there, and that's something we're definitely working on, trying to figure out how do we showcase the passion that the team has here, because I think like it goes from the art department to the engineer who's working on the very in-depth systems to the designers who are making characters, and we try and get the designers out there because it's something players get their hands on, could actually feel like this character, and so to get a designer out there makes a lot of sense. But I think there's opportunities for us to revisit that, and that's what we try to do a lot with like the Q&As we did in the past, where I would grab like just a broad subsection of each of the different departments and parts of Capital Games and say, cool, we're going to sit down for a couple hours, we're going to answer as many questions as we can, and we're going to answer stuff from all across the board. And it just so happened that of course the art guy is very prolific, and people were like, why are all these questions about art getting answered? It's because there's a dude in the room who's just answering them all, right? Like so we'd love to get more of that stuff out there and figure out how do we reinvigorate that stuff in the future, because I do think it's important to get a lot of different voices out there and to show many different faces to this thing. We've got another interview coming out around Lord Vader. It was worked on by Mouse. I think you've seen some of his interviews in the past around Queel. So we try and get a lot of the designers out there, but that's just like one part of the whole thing. So we'd be good to keep expanding that breadth to more and more people out there, and to parts you probably don't even know exist inside the studio. So we'll definitely try and do that in the future.
That's awesome. That's something that I've kind of wanted to ask, because there's so much that I don't understand about how like the coding works to make, like, because you guys always say like there's interactions, and I understand from like a conceptual level that characters interact, but I don't understand how the code interacts with this, or how this data disk and this game mode mess with this. So I just think that would be awesome, not only for myself kind of selfishly, but for everyone else who's maybe interested in the finer workings of the game, to get to see how that works, how the art works, all that good stuff. So I'm happy that that's something that you guys are at least wanting to do sometime in the future.
Yeah, we did a little bit of that with like the Jedi Knight Revan stuff a long time ago. We did kind of a snapshot where we like literally just like took a camera, went around the studio, and like talked to different people as part of the process for building Jedi Knight Revan, and like how did they come up with the look for Jedi Knight Revan, because there was a lot of different options they could have, and what is the like canon look for it, and all that kind of stuff, right? So I would love to do more of those kind of deep dives into like the process itself, because I do think it's fascinating. I mean, I'm in this industry, so clearly I find it fascinating because I wanted to be part of it. But like, I think it is truly fascinating to just get like a little peek behind the curtain and see like, oh, that's some weird stuff that I never expected to happen, or like seeing just like the wireframes of characters sometimes is exciting, or just like, I think I shared an image once where people don't realize that those like blueprints you see in the background of like the ships, the ship screen, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
that's just a 3D model of the ship with a texture overlay on it. It's not a static image. It's a like, has that like sort of crisscross pattern over top of it, that it's got a texture that makes it look that way. And I shared a picture of like the Unity software where just like we took the camera and just turned it like 45 degrees to the side, and you just see there's a whole bunch of layers of stuff that you're seeing directly down on top of, but it's just a ship that's just chilling in the background there and stuff like that. And everyone was like, I had no idea that was a real model back there. And there's lots of stuff like that where you're like, oh, that's how they make that thing? That's weird. That's cool. So I'd love to do more of that in the future for sure.
I'm staking my claim right now. When the art team does interviews, I get first crack at the art team. I love the art. I'm staking that right now. I'm putting my name in the hat for the art interviews. Now, this is just gonna, hopefully this just breaks up the mood a little bit. We've been talking a lot of great Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes stuff. Lots of questions that people were really excited about, like Conquest, have been answered.
Chocolate milk for sure.
Chocolate milk for sure. I promised this. I doubt that you'll enjoy this, but I promised Ashley from my guild that I would at least read this because I asked them, like I did everyone, hey, are there questions? You know, they talked about territory wars and all that stuff. And this is an example of the passion that can sometimes come over in Star Wars Galaxy viewers. It's not necessarily super helpful, Ashley, but, you know, I promise. So she says, ask them when I can't even read this. This is bad. This is strictly, this does not express my views in any way. I just promised. Ask them why they're money hungry, greedy Fs that constantly beg for people's money by locking their newest characters behind multi-$1,000 paywalls. Then tell them that I, specifically me, said to choke to death on a donkey dick while it's ejaculating down there. I can't finish this. This is so bad. And that I want to watch. Is this stuff that you and Doja come across on the forums? Because I've been attacked personally. I've had death threats at me and my family for making farming guide videos. I posted a video where I literally cried because I was getting death threats, and Doja reached out to me and said, hey, we get the same thing. Is this something that you get a lot? And what can we do to keep our questions not like Ashley, my guild member, stated, but constructive like I've tried to be today? How can we kind of dodge the hate? Because it is Star Wars and it is passion. So people are going to get caught up in weird, stupid shit like this. But how can we, what would you like us to do to get, you know, be more constructive as opposed to degrading like that?
Yeah, it's, you know, I think it is always reassuring in some way to see the passion out there. Because I think the worst case scenario is that people stop yelling. Honestly, like if the people yell because they care. And you know, something I've learned over the course of just my life, just personally, is that most people, when they're frustrated, there is a reason why they are yelling and why they're angry. And it's not because they are malicious people. I like to believe that everyone is a good person generally, and that something drives them to get to that point. And oftentimes when we're designing stuff and we're looking at feedback, we have to try and divine what is the thing that's really providing them friction. And it's a heck of a lot easier when they can say, this is my experience, here is why I'm frustrated, and kind of spell it out cleanly. And that helps us make a lot of changes, you know, and really helps the team understand a lot faster what is the core issue. It may not be what you're saying, but we can at least figure out where that frustration is coming from and figure out what the deeper root cause of it is. I think one thing I try and do in my life in general is take actions towards the goal I want to achieve. And so figure out what that goal is and then do things that solve it. Because oftentimes you can feel like you want to do something, or you want to lash out, or you want to be frustrated at something, but it doesn't actually accomplish anything. And maybe that makes you feel better in the moment. And that's what your goal is then. But if your goal is to make the game better, there is a way you go around doing that that's different than being just kind of full of anger and frustration. And I get that happens sometimes. I think it is hard to sometimes take a step back and to let yourself cool down and be a little bit more rational with what you're trying to say on the internet. It's the internet, for God's sakes here, right?
Yeah,
like, we know it happens.
The internet's got the best of me, man.
Yeah.
Sometimes they do.
So I understand when people get frustrated. The only thing I ask is that they do it in a way that is not personal, and that they do it in a way that's constructive. And I think that again, do things that accomplish your goal. If you're just mad about something, that's okay, but then do something to solve that frustration. And also, it's a game. Like, we take this very seriously, but we also don't take ourselves too seriously, right? There's a difference between those two things of like wanting to be passionate, but also not being bullheaded to think we know how to do this perfectly.
Yeah.
And so I would say to people out there who have that kind of response to saying that, you know, that we are terrible people when we make this game and we try and just suck the life out of people. I don't think that's fair. I don't think if you meet the people on the team, I don't think you'll get a single person that you'll talk to who feels like that. I think when it's easy to yell into the void and say that like this entity as a whole is something that frustrates me, it's easier to do that than to dive at someone individually. Because I think, like I said, when you talk to them, I think we are reasonable people and we make a lot of sense. And I hope that we can get out there more and help people understand that perspective, while also being open to criticism. I think criticism is a big part of how our game gets better over time. I don't want to say that we have all the answers. Don't want to say we're going to be perfect. Any of that stuff. If Conquest 7 is aimed to go off of messed it up. We had to pull it back down, and we're putting it back up as fast as we can, right? So we want to be open to that and want it to be in a way that I can translate that to the team and bring it forward. I will say it's hard for me then to sit on a Reddit thread or a forum post and then re-edit down everything they're saying to something that's not just like yelling frustration.
It's taxing
into the core thing they want, and then pass that to the team. Like, I can't ask a designer to just like go into a thread on Reddit and say, go get your feedback from this, right? Because they'll be like, the world hates us. What is going on here? What am I supposed to do with this? And it's like, well, there's a core of it of what they're saying that we're trying to sort of understand out of that. And there are frustrations that are legitimate, but if it's done in a way that's not productive, I think it can hurt both sides of the coin here. So try and do what you can to be level-headed and set a goal and then do things that accomplish that goal, as opposed to just doing things that make you feel good. That's just like life advice in general, what I'm trying to also internalize.
Another poster.
Yeah, another PSA from Crumb.
I think that was actually the best thing we talked about. I mean, I hate to say it, you kind of did a big step forward to humanizing Capital Games. I'm one of those people who feels intense moments of anger and rage sometimes, but I always try to like calm down before I make videos. So I exactly understand, and I've definitely been a recipient of some vicious stuff. So I know there's a lot. I'm kind of monitoring chat right now, especially super chats. Thank you guys so much for all the super chats. There's always going to be people who think that what you just said there was BS, but I've known you pretty well over the last, how we've been hanging out playing video games, and I would like to be an olive branch to the people watching right now. Like, I believe you 100% that you're genuine in thinking that, you guys are trying to take constructive stuff and you guys aren't the worst thing ever. And I understand that people are going to hate me for that. APGAINS is a shill and, all of this good stuff. But
yeah,
if I'm being 100% honest, I appreciate that actually tremendously, because that's, as a fan of the game and not just a content creator, that was amazing to hear.
We all care about this game deeply. And I think once you think about it in that sense, that we're all working towards something together. And while it may not feel that way sometimes, we all want this thing to be great. And we're going to do what we can to make that happen. And, like it's going to happen. We live in a world where it's okay to scream profanities at people and put them down and to give them death threats and things like that. When this is a video game, like, one of the perspectives that I realized was one of the things that gave me some perspective on like how out of whack our understanding of this is, and how it's trying to change my vocabulary as well when I try and talk about things, is like when, EA was voted like the worst company in America for like, 2 years in a row by Forbes or whatever's online poll. This is like in the midst of like the economic downturn where the banks had literally destroyed the country's economy. The world was falling apart in a variety of different ways. And EA, the guys who bring you entertainment, they're the devil, right? It's like, there's some perspective to be had around what really matters in life in some degree. And so I try and keep that as well. Like, we make video games. This is all about entertainment. It's all about having fun. And, like, some people feel passionate about that, and that's okay. But just remember, at the end of the day, we're here to make a Star Wars video game, and that ultimately is what it's all about. And, like, using the language, and like, I think the game industry as a whole is guilty of this as well, of like driving up a passion level that leads to a lot of this stuff as well in some cases, where the words of like love and hate get thrown around a lot. And when I say like, oh, I hate that game, it sucks. But what I really mean when I say that is that game I don't enjoy very much, and it's not for me, right? Like, that is truly what I'm saying in there. Like, I don't hate that thing. Hate's a very strong word. And I think we start using a lot of hyperbolic language, and it doesn't, like, the nuance of what you're saying, like when you hear me say it, you like know what I kind of mean behind it. But on text form, a lot of that gets lost, right? So it gets hard to understand what the nuances are of a conversation when everything is just this like, text page of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say, like, it is hard sometimes. I mean, that's, being a community manager is not always an easy thing. You are on the front lines dealing with a lot of frustrated people, and, that's the passion you are there to deal with. And it could be stressful. It could be tiring. It can be, sad in some cases. It can be a lot of different things, but ultimately, I think there's so many good people in this community and so many people that are awesome and passionate that it offsets all of that by tenfold, right? Where you meet so many awesome people that you get to talk to about a game that you both care about deeply, that, we, again, have some perspective. Like, sure, the guy who's angry maybe gets on the forums, and the guy who's having fun probably doesn't ever care to get on the forums, right? And so you only get like a weird subsection of this stuff. But it is tiring and taxing. There's some hard stuff that community managers deal with. And I'm not saying just for me, but for Doja as well. Like, people find this is the space for things like, suicide threats sometimes. Like, what do you do with that? I'm not a medical professional. I am in no way qualified to talk to you about your feelings or anything like that. I am here to manage the video game community. But how do you deal with those kind of things? You can't tell if they're real or not. How do you deal with a death threat when someone gets mad at you, right? Like, you deal with a lot of the same things here. Like, we're not prepared to deal with a lot of this stuff, but we have to deal with it. That's the world we live in now. And so I wish it was easier, and I wish we could all just like take a step back and be more rational about that. But thinking humanity acts rationally about stuff has gotten a lot of people in trouble. So, just remember there's a human on the other side. That human cares as well, and that on both sides of the coin. From us, as community managers, looking at people on Reddit, and the forums, and YouTube, and Twitch, and all that stuff, that you are a human, and I need to understand why your frustration happens and where that comes from. But also, on the other side of that coin, that the people who are making this game are passionate people who love it, and they're human beings who go to work every day and try and get excited about why they're working here. And when you bash them, they maybe feel slightly less excited about that every day.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when I get similar, especially at the extreme, it kind of reduces the willingness to upload a video the next day or to continue my farms or all that stuff. So I think at the basic level, it's not constructive whatsoever to be vicious. And I know lots of people are still going to be vicious, and I guess that's just life. But I appreciate what you guys do. I think the game has been in a better place. I wouldn't spiritually, since you guys have started doing this more forward, front-facing outreach, and I definitely appreciate that. It is kind of past the time that we agreed was the stop point, but I do want to bring up one last thing. You can skip over it, but I mostly do early game stuff, and I would be Hoksang Lao on Obra Dinn if I didn't ask this question.
Framed from the start.
Exactly. I was set up and shot and hung and all of the above. But APGAINS knew it from the beginning because I'm telepathic. So my Hoksang Lao moment is most of the game now, especially for people who've been playing for longer times, take place in that Gear 13 to Relic, whatever the max Relic is. Are there plans, and I know you can't talk about specifics because you can't talk about in the future, are there plans to kind of change the way we get from Gear 1 to Gear 12? Because for a lot of players, that's kind of a sore spot, since I mostly deal with early game players, even those who spend money. Is that something that's being discussed? I'm sure specifics you can't talk about, but is that at least something that's on your guys' mind as a priority?
Yeah, absolutely. There's definitely a lot of conversations going around the early game gear progression and things like that. It's something we're always looking at and figuring out when is the right time to make changes to that or whatnot. But it is something we care about deeply, and we know that there are some pain points along the way there that definitely cause a lot of friction and frustration for people. So know that your cries are not falling on deaf ears. We are listening.
That's all I wanted. All I wanted was some affirmation that or some confirmation that we weren't yelling into nothingness. All right, man, thank you so much for coming on. You got to get back to the missus, and I am kind of already 20 minutes late to a night class that I probably won't attend at this point. I'll just watch the recording afterwards. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's an econ class that I have down pat. It's fine. I'm not doing I'm a bio major. Econ's easy. But thank you so much for stopping on by. I'll probably be on finishing up Obra Dinn and some Magic the Gathering tomorrow on your Twitch. You guys do something pretty special while we have about 500 people watching. Is there something special you guys do on Twitch that you would like to promote here?
Yeah, absolutely. So in October, we'll be obviously doing our charity event that we do every year with Extra Life. This is the whole studio inside CG gets together as a team and just puts on a great event to try and raise as much money as we can. This year, I'm doing something a little bit different. Leading up to that event in October, I'm trying to raise as much money as I can on my own channel, twitch.tv/SBCrumb. Feels weird every time I say that, but I will say it. Come out, said Tuesdays and Thursdays. I play a lot of different games. AP can attest. It's almost a different game every stream, except for this, except for Obra Dinn, because Yeah, Oberdin's been a fan favorite, but try and play a lot of different stuff and raise money for charity, you know, as much as I can. So we've been doing great so far. I mean, a huge shout out to the community for all the money we've raised. It's been truly amazing, the amount of money we've raised already. I think last year we raised 8,000 as a whole, and I think I'm already, you know, over $4,000, almost $5,000, and we're still 44 days to go. So, you know, if you can come out and just hang out, that's great too. Spread the word, that's awesome. If you can donate even $1 or $2, that goes a long way to a really great cause. The Children's Miracle Network is a really great charity, and I highly encourage you to take a look at that. Just go to cmn.com and you'll find all the details about it. I won't spend time going through all the details here, but it's a great charity. Check it out, and hopefully we'll see you guys Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6:30 Pacific time to around 9:30 Pacific time every week pretty much.
It usually directly follows an APGAINS stream, so if you want to come hang out 4:30 Pacific Standard Time to 6:30 Pacific Standard Time, APGAINS pretty much every day. You know, we lead right into Crumb. That's a perfect segue.
Yeah, exactly. Why not? Just dive right in.
On my own channel. I never
there
thought
you
I'd
go.
have to do that. All right, man.
Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it and getting to chat about this stuff. It's awesome
Thanks,
to
man.
talk to you.
Yeah, it was great to learn about Crumb and to get some good information on the game. Hopefully, I wasn't, you know, too crazy. I had a couple of things in the wings that probably would have fractured our relationship, but those will be more private.
We'll talk offline again. It's happy to chat with you, man, and thanks again for having me on.
All right, man. Have a good one. I'll see you later.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.